Hello and welcome to Unified Security with Jamf. My name is Katie McKay. I'm a consulting engineer for security here at Jamf. A few things we're going to be going over today. I'm just going to tell you about security in general. I know, been there, done that, but I'll tell you about it anyway just to get going. Then we're going to start talking about the Jamf portfolio, and then the Jamf portfolio but together, and then we're going to wrap things up. We're going to start with the basics. To understand how Jamf creates a complete security picture, we're going to talk about what security actually means. I'll give you some context as well as a little discussion about what the CIA triad is, no, not the CIA, and I'm going to be sprinkling in some general best practices for keeping your Mac secure. Now you may be thinking, of course I know what cybersecurity is. But do you know the scope of what information security encompasses? All these examples here of recent headlines I gave up here are of different yet extremely common attacks, targets, and types. Whether you're a government entity or a human rights group, you're absolutely a target. Now, how do these things happen? How did they start? In the unfortunate case of Revere Health here, one of their employees had the misfortune of opening malware that was sent to them by email. They didn't have the proper malware prevention tools in place to stop whatever the employee opened up. They also may have not been trained on how to spot phishing attempts. Now, AT&T is experiencing a major data leak because it had a weak point in the security of its databases, which could have been exploited in many ways. Again, they did not have a way to detect suspicious behaviors that had happened prior to this event. Now, the databases have been hacked, service has been denied, information is out there. Why is this so imperative to prevent in the future? Not only have people's addresses, names, and social security numbers been released to the general public, these people are going to be mad, upset, disappointed, and they're going to go out looking for a safer option. Now, let's pivot from the scary stuff for a second. Here's one of my favorite acronyms, and I'm going to briefly tell you about it. There are three major things that you want your information to be, and those things start with C, I, and A. You want your information to be confidential. You don't want anyone else to have the information that you are storing. You want your information to have integrity. That means you want your information to be in the same state as it was when you first stored that information. And you want your information to be available. You want constant access to your information. Any outages, manipulation of data, or breach of confidentiality that occur due to a cyber attack is simply unacceptable. Now, altogether, these three things make up the CIA triad, the complete picture of security. Private, untampered, and accessible information. Sounds nice, right? Well, I'm going to show you some ways you can achieve all that. Here are just a few of many, maybe infinite best practices to keep in mind while securing your IT environment. First, you want to define your architecture. What I mean by this is maintain accountability for all devices and hardware in your environment and what kinds of software they are running. Then from there, you can branch off and add layers, but this is the bare minimum. Accountability for all aspects of your architecture can bring you so much closer to becoming more secure, because the more visibility you have into your assets, the better prepared you can be for potential threats. Now, you want to ensure your data isn't being accessed by anyone inappropriate, hint confidentiality. Ensure your apps and software aren't gaining any privileges that they shouldn't be. If your cool, newly downloaded app is suddenly gaining root privileges, that's definitely something that should concern you. Also, you want to have something in place that will perform patch management so you can stay up to date on the latest and most secure versions of all your software. And lastly, but most importantly, you want to implement a solution that can do these things and more. Speaking of which, let's go into the Jamf portfolio. Now for the fun stuff. Let's talk about three major parts of the Jamf portfolio: Pro, Protect, and Connect, and what they're all about from a security perspective. Jamf Pro, you know it, you love it. It is our enterprise mobility management solution, which encompasses mobile device management, mobile application management, mobile identity and access management, and mobile content management. Basically, you name it, this does it. But in terms of security, how does this help? What does this mean for the well-being of your information? I want to touch on a few key things you can do with Pro that are essential to security. You can automatically push software patches. This is so important because the more out of date your software is, the more vulnerable it is. This makes it as easy as possible to stay up to date on the latest protections your software can provide. 2, you can set conditional access controls, which creates conditions that users have to meet before being granted access to your org's information. Now, device hardening. This basically means you can enforce settings and configurations and turn off non-essential services, which in turn secures your environment. Next, you can either block or force OS updates. And lastly, you can remotely issue commands and files, which includes deleting files that may be potentially harmful. Jamf Protect is our flagship security solution, so it's going to have a lot of solid features for protecting Macs. For starters, we have threat prevention, which is our tool that monitors for threats based on their signatures. So their hash, signing info, or Yara signature. Threat prevention comes with the option of blocking and quarantining those detected threats before they have a chance to launch. You can even create custom prevent lists in case there is something specific you'd like to block. Next, analytics are Jamf Protect's behavioral detections, which are largely mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and will generate an alert or log when suspicious behaviors are detected. Like threat prevention, you can also create custom analytics built to suit your individual needs. Protect's Insight feature is mapped to the CIS benchmarks and will help you maintain a secure environment by creating a custom report of your compliance status. Next, we have SIM integration. You can forward your Protect data to your SIM or data bucket for further analysis of events, creating that single pane of glass where you can view cross-platform data all in one place. You can also forward your endpoints log data using unified logging filters, furthering the amount of visibility you have into the security status of your Mac fleet. Next, we have Apple Security Activity Monitoring. In the Jamf Protect console, you can not only see your Protect activity, but you can also see the activity of your native security tools like Gatekeeper, Xprotect, and MRT. And you can also see which computers are up to date on these and which versions they're running. Lastly, we have custom workflows. You can create automated custom response workflows with Jamf Pro and Jamf Protect, and even perhaps with Pro Protect and Connect. Spoiler alert. Some of the many things you can do with Pro and Protect together include, but are definitely not limited to, user notifications, disconnecting devices from the network, wiping the computer entirely, or any combination of these things. With Jamf Connect, you have the ability to provision accounts. You can create user accounts just in time based on credentials from your identity provider. Unified password expiration and complexity policies on local device accounts enforced by your identity provider. Eliminate the threat of shared administrator credentials by making administrator accounts only when needed and only to authorized users as defined in the identity provider. Next, you have secure device enrollment. You can lock account credentials to device owner even with single sign-on from an identity provider. You can install critical security software and resources before the user is allowed access to Finder while informing the user of progress in cooperation with Jamf Pro. It can also leverage device owner identity to install tools, software, and settings specific to the needs of that individual user or whichever group that user is placed in. Next, cloud multi-factor authentication. Enforce two-factor authentication needs at the macOS login window enforced by requirements set in the identity provider. It logs all logins by requiring network access to the cloud identity provider. Next, we have password syncing. You can require users to keep local passwords in sync with cloud identity provider expiration and password complexity requirements. For Okta, it leverages a convenient one-step sign-in to web resources. We have Kerberos management. Obtain and renew Kerberos certificates without the bind. Client machines must still communicate with the key distribution server. Kerberos certificates are used to automatically connect to file shares and on-premises printers. Lastly, no on-prem binding needed. Local accounts eliminate the issues with Keychain and File Vault when devices stop communicating with the domain controller. Now here, I have an example of what it looks like when Jamf Pro and Jamf Connect work with each other. So in other words, this is an example of the Pro and Protect custom remediation that I mentioned earlier in action. And afterwards, I'll explain a little bit about how it all works behind the scenes. So here, I'm going to open up the Celis Trade Pro, which is the Apple Juice malware. The user is going to try to open the malware, and it's going to require that they enter their password. Now everything seems to be going as usual. It looks like we're going to be able to open the malware, but native security tools as well as Jamf Protect stop this from happening. And Jamf Pro in action starts remediating immediately, locking the user out of the computer. Now this message, as well as even using DEP Notify, is completely customizable. So if you want more or less information, or if you want the user locked from the network, you could also do that as well. And after that is done, the user is able to go on as they were, and the malware is quarantined. Now here's what that looks like on the back end. This is an attempt at a visual layout of what's actually happening between Pro and Protect to make the magic happen. When Jamf Protect is triggered by a behavioral detection, it writes an extension attribute to the computer, then runs a recon command, then issues a custom event trigger for a Jamf Pro policy. The Jamf Pro agent then places the computer in a smart group based on the event that occurred, and then runs the policy that was triggered by Protect. Now, the steps we have to take to make that magic happen. First, we need to create an analytic or a behavioral detection. Here I have an analytic that detects when someone attempts to launch that Apple Juice malware. And in this analytic, I have instructed Protect to add the offending computer to a Jamf Pro smart group named Protect Apple Juice using an extension attribute. Then we want to create the corresponding smart group in Jamf Pro to identify the computers that have triggered the analytic from step 1. And lastly, we want to create a policy in Jamf Pro to install DEP Notify to lock the user out of their machine and notify them of what's occurring while Jamf remediates the incident after the user attempts to run the malware. That was a mouthful. This is all completely customizable since we understand that everyone's environments are unique. You can do so much as removing the device from the network or remotely wiping the system, or as little as changing the message displayed to the user. Now, that was just one example of the infinite possibilities of what you can do with the power of Jamf Pro and Jamf Protect. Imagine what great things could happen if we could use Jamf Pro, Protect, and Connect all together. Between the device management properties of Jamf Pro, the malware behavior and compliance aspects of Jamf Protect, and the account management aspects of Jamf Connect, we really have a complete picture of what security in an organization should look like. Of course, we have several more products in our portfolio as well, such as Jamf School and Jamf Now, that offer unique security features. You have also seen the way Pro and Protect interact with each other to provide a completely customizable and automated experience. If you liked that, you'll absolutely enjoy watching my other talk with Sean Rabbit titled Remediating Security Events with Jamf Pro, Jamf Protect, and Jamf Connect. Lastly, remember that Jamf support is available for any of the individual products we discussed here, but they are unable to help with custom scripting. If you need assistance with configuring Jamf Pro, Jamf Connect, or Jamf Protect, please reach out. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your JNUC.